Last night I prayed to the Matrix, not to admire it, but to revile it. I wanted to channel its evil energies unto me, so its otherwise non-locality can be localized in my presence, so I can speak blasphemy unto its face. And when I felt its energy, my balls went up into my stomach, and I felt a sensation of fear. I even was a bit too afraid to speak. I was kind of paralyzed. I even started to moan in a quiet agony that was auditory. It was like, oh, oh. But I knew I had to follow through. So I said, why do you torment me by molesting my consciousness? Stop harassing me. Why do you torment me by molesting my consciousness? Stop harassing me. Meanwhile, it did not communicate to me with words or with telepathy, but by way of its presence of putrefaction alone, which spoke louder than words ever could. We've all heard the expression for something to be ineffable, which is defined as something that is so divine that words can never do it justice. Well, this was a kind of negative ineffableness, which was so evil that words can never do justice as to how evil it is or what it is or anything like that, but you just feel into it. And then you know that people who give a claim that evil is subjective or non-existent are the very people who have never actually witnessed evil, experienced it, or in my case, invoked the very essence of its presence before them. I know now that evil is a objective fact because I have met evil itself. And I would describe it as a metaphysical sickness that has infected the entirety of humanity, and there is no cure. And even those who seem as though they are the non-infected are actually forever a convalescent. Here's a metaphor that describes this insufferable reality as I see it. Imagine there is a sentient and innocent child born from infancy without a frame of reference of anything better into a prison slash hell realm where he is subjugated to humiliation rituals, mind control, forced labor, and being made against his will to worship the warden as if it was his god. And one day, as he's lying on his back, bloody and crying, being kicked in the face by the Orwellian boot from the prison guard, he asked, "Why are you doing this to me? Why do you hate me?" And the prison guard responds, "Why do you let me? And why do you love it?" As his hands are tied behind his back. My friends, it is a mistake to say that the Matrix is infected with a virus, for the Matrix itself is the virus, both corporeal and incorporeal. To say that it is, quote, infected with a virus is to say that this realm was good at one point in time, but something went terribly wrong. It also suggests that we could get rid of the virus because it is a foreign body, and if we just get rid of the virus of the Matrix, then life here on Earth could actually be a good experience. But that is entirely wrong, and you hear it all the time. People say the Matrix has a virus. The Matrix has the virus. No, the Matrix is the virus. It is the flesh, and it is also the very ground in which we walk on. It is humanity at large. It is the animal kingdom at large. It is matter itself. You could say that the very atom is the demiurge itself. Consciousness without awareness is unconsciousness. So, to all of you pseudo-spiritualists out there who are all consciousness this and consciousness that, you claim to be about that life, but you're not. You're a bullshit artist, but yet you go on and you say things like, I am raising the vibration of my consciousness. I am ascending my consciousness. I am evolving my consciousness. And I am teaching others to do the same. No, you're not. Because consciousness is not just a talking point. You have reduced it thereby to being merely a word. It's completely meaningless. Because to be conscious, or to have consciousness, is to have the conscientiousness to be conscious of the fact that we are in a hell realm and that we are in a matrix. But these New Age gurus, they never talk about the reincarnation soul trap. They never talk about the fact that this is a loosh farm. They never talk about mind control, or the world is controlled by psychopaths, or that this is a malevolent creation designed by a malevolent demiurge. There's none of that. So I say that consciousness, for true men and women of consciousness, is lucidity. It is being aware, or being conscious of certain things. It's not just consciousness by itself. It has to be accompanied with lucidity, where your consciousness is conscious of the fact that we live in a shit show for a clown world. If the Matrix, if the Hell Realm is not first place in your mind at all times, and you don't have world weariness, and you don't have hatred for this material realm, for the flesh, and all of the things that come with the virus, which is the calcification of this realm, then you're asleep. But these people, they give a claim that they are awakened, but really they are asleep. Consciousness must have lucidity, and in the same way, if you are in a lucid dream, you become aware of the fact that it is a dream, and all of the dream phenomena thereby, you are aware that it is a illusion. Now, the same is true for what you might call lucid wakefulness. When you are truly conscientious, you are lucid while you are awake of the fact that what we call the real world is nothing more than a dreamlike scenario of false dialectics, suffering, and evil illusions. See, when I say that I am in a state with my consciousness of lucid wakefulness, that means that I am aware at all times that I am in a hell realm. I am aware of all times that I am in a matrix. I am in a state of lucid wakefulness. And without being in that state, you are not awake, you are asleep. You are not conscious, you are unconscious. Even if you give a grandiose claim of having a superior consciousness, I say that if you're not aware that this is a hell realm, if you're not aware that this is a matrix, then you are unconscious. You are not in a state of lucid wakefulness. You are akin to being in a dream where it was very vivid at the time, maybe, but then you wake up, you take a piss, and right when you're about to go back to sleep, it was all very vague to you, and by the time you wake up again, you forgot all about the dream, but you know that you had a dream. Okay, that's the same with these people who claim to be conscious but are unconscious. They claim to be awake, but they are asleep. Is that they are not in a state of lucid wakefulness. They are basically in a kind of REM sleep scenario where they are dreaming, but they're not aware that they're dreaming. They might be semi-aware, but then 30 minutes later, they just forget all about it. That is akin to what they are. But people like you and me, we are true men and women of consciousness because we have conscientiousness, or we are conscious of. See, that's the key word there. Consciousness, in order for it to be superior, in order for it to be lucid, must be conscious of at all times the fact that we are in a matrix. We are in a simulation that is a bad copy of something that was probably malevolent in the first place, but then it created a simulacrum. And the rest is history. We understand what this realm is. We are cognizant at all times that it is a simulation, and sometimes we lose lucidity. Sometimes we might fall victim to the mind control. We might take the multiplicity of externalities, and we might take them to be real, but then we let our negative emotionality subside, and we become lucid, and we return to our center, and we're like, wait a minute, those are just NPCs. This is just theater for the masses. This is a historical principle that is playing itself out, and I am the non-historical entity par excellence, because this realm is not my true home. It is all a dialectic of one falsehood versus another, controlled entirely by a philosophically psychopathic principle that puts evil at the top, and it makes all of the good, spirited people, who are the real beings, targeted individuals. You see, and that's another thing. Consciousness, when you are conscientious or conscious of the fact that this is a matrix and this is a hell realm, consciousness thereby is no longer a good thing. It comes with it a kind of world weariness. It comes with it a kind of antagonism for the fact of having been born. It comes with it a certain antagonism of all of the bullshit that this experience puts us through. So a symptom of those who are truly at a high level of consciousness is, because of their conscientiousness, they have so much empathy towards the fact that this is a suffering realm, and it causes them to suffer on account of the fact that they suffer and suffering exists in the first place. That is the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter is that when you are truly at a high level of consciousness, quite frankly, you are prone to depression, you are prone to madness, and you don't like being alive a lot of the time. But for those who say, oh, I'm at such a high level of consciousness and I'm just happy, and you say, why? And they say, well, I've raised my vibration and I have positive thoughts, and that's what it always goes to. But in another way of saying it. Basically, what they're saying is that if you are a true conscious being, and the superiority thereby, it just means that you're an optimist, you have nothing but good thoughts, and you make yourself feel happy and good all the time. But I tell you that the reverse is true. If you are truly a conscientious person, then you have negative thoughts that predominate, because the fact that we're in a matrix, the fact that we're in a hell realm is first place in our mind, and we see the negativity all around us. And we are prone to be negative and also to have a negative principle because we want to negate this reality and have nothing to do with it, the non-participation principle, because we see the negativity thereby. There's two kinds of negativity. The first is negativity insofar as seeing this realm as a bad place to be. And this arises a lot of negative thoughts. And the quote solution, if you want to call it that, is really to see it for what it is and then negate, not the negative thoughts, but negate the flesh and the world itself. I'm not very good at negating the flesh because I have an addictive personality and I have a lot of copes, but I am quite expert at negating the externality of the outside world. I see it as a suffering realm, but I also see it as a world of complete and utter falsehood. And I suffer thereby because me as a spiritual being, I need truth, but there is no truth in this reality other than taking the truths that are presented and then declaring them to be falsehood and just negate everything. Because the virtue of having a negative mindset is that you have the power to see reality for what it is and then you thereby negate it. And that comes with a high level of consciousness. But most people who claim that they have a high level of consciousness by no means have a high level of consciousness. In fact, they're quite literally governed in the most unconscious, asleep, and animalistic state that you can possibly imagine. They have dehumanized themselves unknowingly to the level of a subhuman and a automaton. You have what you might refer to as the blue-pilled NPC normie. And that's what the majority of these so-called spiritualists are. They're nothing but apologists for this place of evil, for this place of suffering. But in their presence, if you say, hey, wait a minute, how do I know the Matrix has you? Because the Matrix must have you, because if it didn't, you would see this place for the Matrix hell realm that it is, and you would be suffering on account of it, and you would be doing everything in your power to unfuck yourself thereby. And perhaps tell others, and you would realize that if you told others and they would turn into complete Agent Smiths on you, you'd be like, oh my god, they're all NPCs, what's going on? You see, that's how I know the Matrix has you. The Matrix has you because you don't talk about the Matrix. You're a victim of the mind control of the hell realm because you don't recognize it as such. But if you see the Matrix, if you see the hell realm, then you, even if you're an atheist, have a higher level of consciousness or conscientiousness because you are conscious of that fact. You have lucidity, you have that lucid wakefulness where you see the dream for what it is. Now, even though I'm not an atheist, I do believe that there is a creator, but I'm a maltheist, so I believe it's an evil creator. And I do believe in a reincarnation soul trap, therefore I do believe that I am a spiritual being. I will say that even if you are an atheist, hell, even if you're like a mainstream Christian type, I will give you credit because a lot of times Christians are aware of the fact that there is a satanic principle and a demonic principle that's controlling this realm. And even though I'm more of, from your guys' Orthodox perspective, a heretical Gnostic, I will give you credit because you have a level of conscientiousness to be conscious of the hell realm and conscious of the matrix. And I commend you for that, even though you might not agree with everything that I say. But who I have a problem with is these new age bullshit artists and these Hindu gurus that seem to just be taking the numerical superiority through the algorithms on the internet by storm, and people are just falling for this toxic positivity hook, line, and sinker, and I'm tired of it. They are as unconscious as it comes, they are asleep as it comes, and they give consciousness a bad name because they're nothing of the kind. If you ask me, they're most likely just NPCs and nothing more. That's not to say that they're not sentient, but they are just at a level where they just do not see the world for what it really is. Because if they did, they would never be undisturbed by the reality in which they are in. Because once you see the Hell Realm, once you see the Matrix, how could you not be anything but perturbed and disturbed thereby? But if you are not perturbed and disturbed thereby, then you don't see the Matrix for what it is. So the consciousness that you're talking about, it sounds to me like a kind of demiurgic simulation, or a demiurgic principle where people are pro simulation. But it also seems to me that this whole oneness that they claim to be a part of, they are assimilated into that oneness, which is nothing more than the epicenter of the artificial intelligence. It's nothing more than them going into and assimilating into the mainframe, into the homogeneous conformity, where they are a part of the dialectic. Now, if you don't believe me, ask yourself, when you listen to these bullshit artists talk about spirituality, are they ever talking about spiritual warfare? No, they are not. That means that, for all intents and purposes, they're just duped by the archonic and demonic and demiurgic principle. They are what you might call battery bitches. When Morpheus said to Neo, and he held up a battery, the goal of the Matrix is to turn a human being or a spiritual being into one of these. That's what they've become. They've become what I call a battery bitch. And I've had enough of these battery bitches, these sadomasochistic people who have this kind of they always want to give apologies and justifications for this suffering realm. They'll say suffering is a good thing. No, it's not. The only thing you learn from suffering is that it sucks and you want it to stop. And how can we be said to be here to learn lessons when every incarnation you get a memory wipe? That's like graduating high school and being forced to go back to kindergarten all over again, over and over and over with a memory wipe. There's no learning in that. You guys, most of my audience already knows this, but I just get really frustrated of these people. Consciousness, consciousness, consciousness. I'll tell you what, your consciousness, your assimilation into that oneness, I want no part of it because I consider it to be of the artificial intelligence. I consider it to be of the mainframe that is projecting, that is the medium of this artificial reality that has enslaved my spirit and put me in this flesh. And if you are operating from that impetus, if you are a perturbation of it, I want nothing to do with you. Because it's like spiritual junk food. It's like a kind of spiritual smut pornography. I don't like it. If you are truly a conscious being, then you are conscious of what you ought to be conscious about. You have to qualify the claim consciousness. And then I bring it to your attention and I say, okay, you talk about samsara, you talk about non-duality, but are you aware that this is a hell realm of suffering controlled by a philosophically psychopathic principle, by a Saturnian principle, and then they go, oh, ho, 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 ho. It's all about perspective, man. You just have to think, no, 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 shh, be quiet. Just be quiet. I have negative thoughts because we live in a negative world that brings about those thoughts. I have negative emotions because we live in a world that arouses those negative emotions out of me. I have negative thoughts and I have negative emotions because this hell realm gives me no choice but to have those emotions and have those thoughts because my consciousness is at such a level where I see it for what it is. And if you don't see it, that's your fucking problem. They say the common denominator of pleasure and pain is equivalent to good and evil, but this is a mistake. I say that both pleasure and pain are a manifestation of an evil principle that are two sides of the same coin. Now, we know that people like you and I, oftentimes we feel pain as a default, and because of that, we want to pursue pleasure to relieve us from the pain, but we only need to relieve ourselves of pain is because we are in a painful state in the first place, which is evil. So it forces us to try to find some relief. So we go to sex, food, alcohol, and otherwise. But a lot of times, you see, pain is not a liar. It's actually the truth. But pleasure is a liar because it makes you think that it is the freedom of your own will to pursue such hedonic activities. A lot of times we might drink a beer and we might say, hey, it's my coat. We might fap to some pornographic images and we say, hey, it's my coat. We might eat unhealthy food and become gluttons thereby and say, hey, it's my coat. But a lot of times when we get into this vicious circle of hedonic activities, we forget that it's actually not our free will to do so, because all you have to do to see that pleasure is a liar and that it's a form of pain is to say with your own volition, with your own will, to do contrary to the previous will that you thought was your own volition, come to find that it's not. So you say, okay, I see what's happening here. I deny myself to alcohol. I deny myself to food. I deny myself to sex. I'm going to be fasted. I'm going to be sober, and I'm going to be celibate. And you will find that you will experience an extreme amount of pain thereby. You'll have hunger pains. You'll get blue balls. And you will feel miserable in your state of sober depression. So when you deny your own will towards pleasure, you realize that it was never your will to go towards pleasure in the first place. First of all, it was because you were in a state of pain as your default that wanted you to go to pleasure in the first place. So you go to pleasure, and then you're just like, oh, this feels good, so it must be good. This is my code. Okay, that was something that I am guilty of. But it isn't until I try to challenge the freedom of my own will, and I say, okay, I'm not going to jack off. I'm not going to eat but one meal a day. It's going to be something healthy, and I'm going to be sober. And when this happens, when I deny pleasure, I come to find that pleasure is something that is more or less forced upon you in a very similar way that pain is forced on you. Pain, for people like us, is our default setting, right? But despite that fact, we say, okay, I need to cure this pain by going towards pleasure. And you think that it's your will until you deny it. And then you realize that pleasure is something that is forced on you in the same way that pain is forced on you. And all you have to do to figure this out is to deny yourself all pleasures, especially the most addictive and degenerate types of pleasure. And then next thing you know, you are going to be bombarded with sexual images in your mind, and you say, no, 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 I thought that this was my will, but I realized that I am being possessed by a principle of fornication that I don't want anything to do with. But yet, it continues and it gets more aggressive as time goes on. It's the same. You want to be sober, but you find sobriety to be so miserable that you are aggressively attacked with the impulse to drink alcohol. You are bored, so you are, even though you're not really hungry, you feel the hunger pains, and you say, I'm going to deny this, and you find that you are harassed. See, that's the thing with pleasure and pain. It's not a duality of opposites. They're actually one and the same. It was pain as your default setting that brought the will towards pleasure in the first place. But you engage in them and you think it's your own free will, but that is only until you begin to deny these hedonic degenerate pleasures that you find that it was never your cope. It was never your will in the first place. There was no freedom on your account thereby. It was a demonic principle right from the get-go. Because, like myself, I try to be sober, I try to be celibate, and I try not to eat unhealthy foods, but I find that whenever I try to do that, I am attacked with all kinds of matrix interference, with all kinds of horrible sensations. I get blue balls and my testosterone goes through the roof and I become aggressive, I become agitated. I feel starving even though I know I'm not starving. I feel like drinking even though it's killing me. So I come to realize that the supposed duality between pleasure and pain is not a duality. They're two sides of the same coin. Pleasure, which is the relief of pain, is actually a form of pain. And you think it's your free will. And it does provide some relief, but that's only when you think it's your own volition. As soon as you try to deny yourself and you say celibacy, fasted state, sobriety, all the way, and you will find that you become attacked by your own flesh. You go, oh, I'm so hungry. Oh, I'm so horny. Oh, I hate this sobriety. Then you get all of these cravings towards weed and alcohol. And I come to realize that the idea that you have copes is an illusion. Your copes is actually a kind of possession of the flesh. And the will that you think is the freedom of the self is actually a epiphenomena of the overall will to life that is no different than animals fucking each other impulsively. It is no different than any other type of impulsive phenomena, instinctual animalistic phenomena that you see in nature. The thing is because you have this illusion that you are self and that you have a will. And you say, I don't will to be depressed. I don't will this pain. But it must be my will to try to go towards my copes or go towards these things that give me some kind of relief. But I'm here to tell you that your copes are actually a lie and they are a source of pain. And how you prove this is to deny these impulses. That's all you have to do to rile the demons up within you. That shows you that it was malevolent in the first place. I'm saying that pleasure is just as malevolent as pain. Two sides of the same coin. As an experiment, let's say you have a routine of fapping to pornographic images, that you have a routine of eating unhealthy food on a regular basis while you're watching content such as this, or that you indulge in alcoholic beverages, you indulge in weed, and you think, this is where I find my joy, this is where I find my relief, my copes. But as soon as you get rid of them and you just wake up one day and you say, I refuse to engage in this degeneracy. I refuse to engage and entertain the very flesh that is antithesis to my spirit that I despise. You come to find out that it is not your 9 to 5 slave job that is the utmost humiliation ritual. No, it's not your poverty. It's not the fact that you're born into a situation where you are just constantly subordinated and being bullied by others. That is a humiliation ritual, but you come to find that it's your own illusion of freedom and your own illusion of having a autonomous will towards these activities of so-called pleasure that is the real humiliation ritual. And it's not seen by others. It is entirely endogenous. It's personal. You feel it on the inside. You get this sense of humiliation and lack of control as soon as you realize that you're not in control of the freedom of your will towards pleasure. Because as soon as you try to sever it and cut ties with it and say, I don't want to entertain this matrix in the slightest, and you might not entertain the external matrix, the shit show for a clown world, geopolitically, religiously, or otherwise, as such, but when it comes to your own flesh and your own desires, see, that's the true humiliation ritual. But it doesn't have any spectators. It doesn't require you to be subordinated to another man. It is when you are behind closed doors and you feel miserable on the inside and you want the misery to go away. But then you realize that all of these so-called copes, all of these so-called pleasures, is really just the demonic nature of my flesh that is going towards things that are unhealthy, embarrassing, and overall disgusting, and I want nothing to do with it. Try to cut ties with those things, and you will find that if you're like me, you will crave alcohol. You will crave marijuana. You will crave food. You will have blue balls and you will be miserable because pleasure is the biggest bully, even more so than pain, because pain is just your default when it comes to the monotony and the banality and the triviality of existence. That's sort of just your default, and it feels more or less normal. But that's not the true humiliation ritual. That's not the true threat to your spirituality. It's actually the very things that are your coping mechanisms that you call pleasure, that you call relief. And I'm here to tell you that as an experiment, if you just refuse to engage in those things, you will realize that it was never your free will. It was never your autonomy. It was the flesh that usurped the authority of your spirit, that took on a mind of its own to humiliate you without spectators, without you being subordinated to another human being. It went on behind closed doors. There is nobody to witness it, which makes it worse because it was your embarrassment towards your own quote self, which was never really yourself in the first place. It was just this impulsive animal that's just fapping away. Here we go again, just fapping away. Oh, eating microwavable Hot Pockets, smoking weed, drinking beer. You're just humiliated. That's how I feel every day. I'm just humiliated because I do these things that I actually despise more than anything. If there's anything I despise more than my miserable, sober state, it is the things that I do in which I refer to as so-called pleasure. We live in a reality that sucks so much that even pleasurable things are a formidable source of pain. But a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think that it's their volition, but it's not. All of the things that give you joy, get rid of them. See what happens to you. You start to cling to them. You start to become attached to these objects, and you realize, like, oh my God, I have assumed equality with the horrific nature of my object of preference. These whores on the internet that you fap to, this poisonous, disgusting goy slob, this poisonous ethanol. This is embarrassing. What's going on? It has nothing to do with you. It's that this body is like a fly. Flies are attracted to unsanitary things. Okay? When maggots hatch from the dumpster, they spend their whole life going from dog turd to garbage can until they die. But then they lay the eggs, and then the cycle starts all over again. That's much the same with the fly called the human flesh. It's so evil and it's so contrary towards your spirit, but it seems to be such a powerful impulse that it drives you towards, like a fly attracted to hunks of dog shit, just jumping from one to the other. That's the nature of the flesh that it calls pleasure. It just goes from uh, sex, alcohol, food. It's like this world is a rat utopia, and the human biology is the rat. And there's some people that don't have this issue. There are people out there who, in a fasted state, in a celibate state, in a sober state, they say, now I find that I am at peace. But there's some people, such as myself, who have these desires that are so evil. And I'm not talking about something in which I would harm another person. When I say evil, I mean the things that we find to be most habituated to, the things that we find to be most normal for us as coping mechanisms. That's what I mean by evil. But ironically, it's a kind of amorality because there's no free will involved, but yet our rational side declares it as immoral. But it's our rationality that declares something as immoral that's actually the illusion because we live in an absurdist reality that is more or less amoral. It's completely irrational. So we shouldn't guilt trip ourselves because of that fact alone. But with every fiber of our being, as far as our spiritual essence is concerned, we find that it is the authority thereof is constantly usurped by the vulgar nature of the animality of the flesh. And the flesh gets a hard on, whether you like it or not. You get hunger pains, whether you like it or not. You crave a drink, you crave a joint, even though you don't want to. First of all, you don't want to feel pain in a sober state in the first place as your default setting. But you consider pleasure to be the lesser of two evils. But I can make the argument that pleasure is even more evil than the pain you feel in the default setting, if not even more evil. Because the devil tricks you, so to speak, and it makes you think that you want to engage in these behaviors, but really, you want nothing to do with it. I say in all honesty, I want nothing to do with alcohol. I want nothing to do with weed. I want nothing to do with the lustful intentions that I have. I want nothing to do with gluttony, any of that stuff. But I find that when I just wake up and I say, okay, I've had enough, no more, I am just fucking harassed. That's another thing. Our thoughts are not our own. Some of them are, I think, but it's a vast minority. Because when I make these videos, I'm speaking my thoughts out loud, and my spirit consents. But when I'm not making videos and when I just listen into the mental content that's going on in my mind, I can say that 95% of my thoughts are involuntary and a nuisance onto me. They're completely meaningless, they're completely purposeless, and I want them to stop. I want my will towards these things to stop. I want these thoughts that say, oh, dude, you really can use a drink right now. Oh, dude, you're hungry. Just pick up your phone and order some takeout at that Asian restaurant you like. Oh, why don't you? No, 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 we're not going to look at those images. We're not going to look at those images. They pop up in my mind. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. Evil, evil, evil. Pleasure is evil. Pain is evil. But they're two sides of the same coin. What do? I'm so sick and tired of behind closed doors being miserable in a sober, fasted, celibate state. But then again, I'm even more sick of engaging in those things. Because there are times where I'm like, it's better to be sober. It's better not to engage in the flesh. I am a spiritual being. But then the animality of my body kicks in. And it's like, oh, and it just never ceases to harass me. It's disgusting. So what's the point I'm trying to make? Pleasure is not pleasurable, nor is there autonomy involved, nor is there a freedom of your own will involved when it comes to your copes. And it's not even a lesser of two evils. It's probably worse than the default pain that you otherwise feel. Because when you're done doing those things, you just find yourself more miserable. It's so fascinating. I could say, in all honesty, I don't want alcohol. Alcohol makes me feel hungover. It makes me feel shitty. I built up a tolerance to it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I can go a week in sobriety. And even though I don't want it, it doesn't make me feel good. It doesn't make me certainly feel good while I'm so-called drunk. I barely feel it. Sometimes it even makes me feel shitty. I feel shittier while drinking. I feel even shittier waking up the next day, but I get these fucking demonic, disgusting impulses that's like, you need a drink, you need a drink. No, I don't. No, I don't. You need a drink, you need a drink. And I'm so fucking sick of it, man. I'm so fucking sick of this flesh. If I was to unalive myself, it's not necessarily because of the externality of this matrix that I despise. It's my own illusion of a selfhood that is connected to this flesh that has all of these intrusive thoughts that are not my own, that cause me to have insomnia, these racing thoughts. They're not mine. Make it stop, make it stop. All of these cravings, all of these unwholesome desires. Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. It doesn't stop. So the point is, I would venture to say that pleasure and pain are equivalent, and one is no more evil than the other.